efforts to continue to see meaning in manuscript evidence and then continuity also. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So, as I was saying, this was initiated by then President Thabo Mbeki after a visit to Mali, and this was a side trip. And at the time, the president of Mali and his wife, the Konares, were trained archaeologists and historians, and they knew of Mbeki's interest in seeing a revitalization of Africa based on African history itself, and took him there. And then he promised to help to resuscitate and to revitalize the libraries in Timbuktu. Okay, so that's how I came in when I went on the first trip with the archivists, South African from the National Archives, and we saw the materials. And then a project emerged, which the promise of help was open-ended, but eventually it meant a new library opposite the historic Sankore Mosque. And I saw that this can't simply be a new building, new library, all sorts of physical things, which is important and necessary, but there's a larger intellectual project that we should pursue. And that is where I came in and worked closely with Malian scholars. We brought lots of them to Cape Town, South Africa, and lots of them came with their Tuareg outfits, walking in Cape Town, which was quite fun seeing people's reactions, because they've never seen this kind of thing here. And we brought some conservators to be trained, and there was a great, real Pan-African exchange. This is what it's all about. You know, it's not some fancy slogan that you just shout, but you must have mobility across the continent. People must begin to know each other. Intellectuals know Europe and America, like New York, much better than what we know at different parts of the continent. Now, it's for logistical reasons beyond our control as poor academics, because the connections are so bad to get. So when we used to go for the first couple of years, we used to go to Mali. We first had to go to Paris. You had to fly to Paris and then fly back into the continent to Bamako. And the situation hasn't really improved. You know from West Africa how, if you want to get from Lagos to Ghana, it's almost impossible. Sometimes you have to go eastwards to go westwards. It's extremely exhausting. So Pan-Africanism, for me, is get the continent connected and make people mobile on the continent. It's extremely expensive, for instance, to go to Nigeria from South Africa. And it's unpredictable. And anyway, this is another story. But this is what I want to underline. There's an intellectual dimension, there's a cultural dimension, and there's a practical dimension in that we need to know the continent, because it's all just foreign country for us, in our little quarters and in our neighborhoods and so on. So that's the other point. Then the point that Andile asked me about Fanon's quote, that, colonialism wasn't only about taking land and destroying your lands, but it was actually about denying your history. I mean, that's so insightful, like so much of Fanon. And just to say, he actually went to Mali and he made observations about Mali and Songhai and the past of the region. And that is a line of Fanon I really like, because I have personal experience of it. Maybe not Andile, but we never saw our own selves in our history in South Africa. So it's maybe your parents' generation or your grandparents' generation that had the same denial of a past. You only saw other people. You didn't see people like yourself and the fact is, though, that we can't be writing histories that as a response that only talks about great men and great women of the past. It should be histories about ordinary people. And in fact, histories in West Africa, the rulers didn't write a lot. The people I'm dealing with are not the rulers. They're not courtiers. They're not people of the court. They are almost writing counter narratives, counter power narratives. These are the ulama, the scholars. They are writing alternative. They're not interested in power. They're seeing men of power as people to stay away from. There's a long tradition of that. And what we should be doing is extracting all this, the writings of Ahmad Baba, of the Kuntis, that deals with political power. So there is political theory, in fact. That would be a great project on political theory in the writings of the Sahara and the Sahel. That's something that I have on a back burner. I have too many projects, but I've been picking up that this recurring theme around scholars talking about power and politics.
I'll have a lot to say to that. I'll email you on that, by the way, afterwards, in terms of political theory, as that is also some of our areas of interest. To pick up to your point, and you mentioned an important point of the fact that Timbuktu was a scholarly land away from the capital. And that actually reflects many, not necessarily many Islamic heritages, but the idea of decentralized engagement of the ulama having a level of power of their own to shape society, but also politicians not contaminating the fabric of society such that even if power is transient, the civilization still continues. Where we have today, especially, I don't know about South Africa in terms of ingrained traditional knowledge and maybe what we call European and secular knowledge today, what we're seeing in many of our colonial sites, post-colonial sites especially, is something that is more or less a repetition, a regurgitation, and knowledge not having its intellectual traditional stamp, as somebody like Waziri Junaid, a descendant of Danfodio, would say in general, when he was visiting one of the new colleges, Ahmadu Bello University especially. What would you advise in continuing this form of resistance, which of course Fanon will call maybe black skins, white mask in one way or the other, but continue to make sure that we actually move forward to having a generation that has a self-esteem rooted in their tradition, and as well as having these manuscripts that we should turn into classics of our own African philosophies, Bantu philosophies, and things like that in our own citadels of knowledge production. Thank you very much.
Yeah, look, it's not easy stuff to do. You know, it's a lifetime. I think our scholarship. One thing, firstly, you must learn about those scholars is the level of commitment to sit down and write. I've traveled in those areas a lot and stayed there for long periods, and it's hard. You know, in summer, it's very, very hot, and it is difficult to get used to it. Now, if you're a local, but even them, it's very hard conditions. And then you see people writing at such levels of abstraction, you know, and writing philosophy and poetry and so on. It's just phenomenal, the conditions in which, for us, we wait for grant money. We first talk about grant money. There's no money. The fact is, the people lived on very little, but produced great work. So it's just ongoing engagement and critical engagement, and using modern contemporary tools for doing the work. You know, so it is. It can never be certainly frozen in the past. So it's ongoing engagement. But as in so many African countries, people have to make a living, and it's expensive. So the time is split between all sorts of side hustles, and doing scholarship takes third place or fourth place. You know. So I mean, I'm very impressed when I go there, but it's hard. And the universities have been, especially the humanities and the kind of things that we do, is not seen as significant by the funders, by the education ministries. We have cuts all the time, and so there are lots of challenges, but we should persevere and do it bit by bit, and you will find like-minded people.
Sorry, as part of the final question, my question was in a lot of ways kind of twofold. It kind of focuses at least on the role of Sufism, especially within West Africa, and the idea of attributing most bodies of knowledge to each other, and specifically with regards to Allah, and what role that plays with regards to the wider story of African humanism, and with regards to how those two ideas kind of relate to each other, at least in Timbuktu, and what can an African undergrad and non-African undergrad learn from this project?
Yes, look, for especially in West Africa and the whole Sahel, Sufism is very important it's a social and socializing form of organization. It's hugely shapes hugely many societies in the Sahel. So it's a reality that has been forceful. It's a form of civil society organizing that's phenomenal, in Senegal, northern Nigeria, and so on. It's not the only form, but it's of great significance. That's number one. So you can see it in terms of social and political theory. You can also see it in terms of civil society mobilization and organizing. The bonds, the networks, the interdependencies, the ukhuwa, the brotherhood that it fosters, the care for each other. This is of crucial significance in West Africa, especially. Much more so than in East Africa, I fathom. So it's not an essential part of, say, an essential Africa, obviously, because it's a Muslim phenomenon, and it's also regionally specific. It can also lead to all sorts of competitiveness in certain parts of the continent with various orders, and then there was a whole other phenomenon, especially after the Second World War, the anti-Sufi movements and so on. So it's an important phenomenon to study. Your second part of your question, I think all students, whether it's graduates or undergraduates, we should instill this passion to learn about the continent and from the continent, and to pour back into the continent with our knowledge and our skills. That despite everything, we're part of the human race. We're just part of the human family. And no matter what people say with regard to situation on the continent, we part of the human family, and we have something to contribute. And we are responsible in the first instance for making that contribution. So get your skills, and whether you stay wherever you are or come back, or for full-time, part-time, whatever, inject it in our societies. There's a huge, there's massive opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for your time, Professor.
So I'll see you in Cape Town next year.
Hey, hopefully, man. Hopefully. I just have one more question.
It's in December.
I was here. Okay, I was there earlier this year. I was there around August. Hey, December is too expensive to go there. But
August is terrible. August is terrible.
Oh, man, it was very sunny. Taking it back to South Africa, I just had one specific question with regards to some of the practices which you kind of learned as part of your experience in Timbuktu, and how you kind of apply it with regards to wider aspects of historical preservation in South Africa and the role that narratives specifically play. I think 2025, I'm sure you'd also agree, has been a very interesting time where you see certain groups such as AfriForum, Solidaritate, take a global platform and try to spread specific narratives about the history of the country and its presence. What do you think the role of at least current and future generations of African scholars when it comes to changing and affecting that narrative?
Yeah, well, I mean, they have a political agenda to keep themselves as the privileged group. That's basically it. Their privilege has been affected and continues to be put in the spotlight, and they can't handle it. So they run to the White House and to friends, right-wing friends all over the world. This is at bottom. It's their privilege that is getting eroded quite legally in the course of transformation, and they've resisted it. And now talking of genocide and all this nonsense. I mean, there was recently a letter signed by lots of Afrikaans-speaking intellectuals and activists and others saying, these people don't speak for us and it's nonsense, this genocide narrative. So, look, South Africa is peculiar. It's one of the countries with a history of settler colonialism, that of the most vicious kind on the continent. And this makes us somewhat different to the rest of the continent, maybe more like Algeria, a bit of Kenya, something like Zimbabwe. But there were large parts of the continent where there were no settlers or even white British, especially, or French administrators, were very few on the ground. Sudan, for instance, even Mali. Large parts of people never saw white people, for decades, because they basically had administrators in the big cities, and then they used local chiefs or sheikhs and so on. Probably even Nigeria. For large parts of the north were left like that. So, in any case, there's a whole variety on the continent of experiences of colonialism, and there's so South Africa, this population of people here with privileges who feel them eroded it's quite unique, I think.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Professor.
Is that it?
Yeah, that'll be it.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege connecting with you guys. Put it on pause.
Yes, good. Thank you so much.